all the athletes who performed at a high level at the Olympics. And every 4 years, as I would watch them, they really seemed to get faster, higher, and stronger. And secretly, I wanted to be at the Olympics maybe sometime in my life. And this happened at the 2008 Beijing Olympics when I found myself attending a conference on what makes a champion at the eve of the Beijing Olympics. In that conference, champions took the stage from different walks of life. Some were athletes, but there were scientists, there were artists, there were performers, there were even corporate champions, and there were even rank and file who were featured, and even Paralympians who also spoke of their paths to championship. And while there were no Filipinos that took the stage at that time, in my mind, I knew certainly that Filipinos were champions as well. And so when I returned to the Philippines to resume my graduate studies, and I was pursuing my doctorate at the time and teaching at the university as well, while also raising my family, I thought that this was a topic that I really wanted to study. And so when my time to do my dissertation came, it was a no-brainer that this would be my area of study. But my question was, who would be the Filipino champions that I would study? Because if I really wanted to distill what makes the Filipino athlete a champion, I needed to go to the elite level. And so I thought maybe I should go for those who have world champion titles to their names. And I'm not sure if there would be enough of them, but certainly some of them. I thought that they needed to have to be world title holders, not just regional title holders like Asian Games or SEA Games. And my search brought me to 5 champions. First was Paeng Nepomuceno, who had 4 Guinness World Book of Records to his name, one of which is being a 6-time World Cup champion in bowling across 3 decades. And then there was also Eugene Torre, who was Asia's first Grandmaster, a title that he will live and die with. And Django Bustamante, who was also a world champion in pool, and multiple other world titles to his name. And of course, his bosom buddy, Bata Reyes, a legendary pool player who has been voted by his peers as the best pool player in the world. And the only female in my sample was Miss Bongku, who is also a bowling champion and the first athlete in the Philippines to be listed in the Guinness World Book of Records for her back-to-back record-breaking performance at the World Cup of Bowling. I had these 5 champions who agreed to participate in my study, and through all the recordings of their life stories and transcripts, if I remember right, more than 10 hours and more than 500 pages of raw transcriptions, it dawned on me that what makes these athletes champions are the stories they weave of their lives. Looking at their stories, it made me realize that each one of them were heroes or heroines on a quest. And this quest, did not mention anything about having any talent or genes that predispose them to greatness in their life. But they had that passion and the unrelenting discipline and determination to pursue goals that were very difficult, but they were willing to take because of that passion and the willingness also to do what it takes to be the best in their sport. They also knew that adversity was part of the game. Winning and losing was part of sports, and that failure and defeat is not something that they can take away from their reality, but something that they had to embrace. And so, when I tried to look further into their life stories, I realized that one, talent and genes really did not emerge in their life stories. We probably overrate talent in search of athletes. And what we really need to look at is the deeper um, realities that they talked about. One is passion. How does passion look like for these champion athletes? Well, one of them talked about the ardent desire to play the sport. Ano ba naman yung ardent desire, no? In Filipino, it kinda sounds more raw. Pagnanasa para sa paglalaro. And one of them even talked about his madness for the sport. I'm so crazy about it that even when my peers in high school would go to parties or even date girls, I would rather play the sport. And one of them even talked about being in love with the sport. I love it, I'm married to it. That's the extent of the passion that they talked about. And because of this passion, they were willing to do the hard work. So when you talk about unrelenting discipline and determination, as they put it, it was about unlimited practice. Walang kapaguran. Kahit wala nang nakatingin, even when nobody's looking or nobody's applauding. So, if the world title or the World Cup, for example, or the World Championship happens every 2 years, what happens in between? It's the daily grind that they have to do. And the willingness also to embrace defeat when it happens. So looking back at their life stories, they include all these milestones plus adversity as well. It is not something that they want to delete in their lives. Apart from this is also the acknowledgement that there are key figures who supported them along the way, and also people who rejected them, who gave them a hard time, or who didn't believe that they could make it. So when you talk about a life story, the antagonist is as important too as all those other characters in a life story. And in the lives of champions, these antagonists are integral to the adversity and to their quest for championship. For instance, in the story of Bongo, she talks about her husband as actually playing a key role for her to be the iconic bowler, the female bowler of the Philippines. She even says, if he didn't desert me for another woman, there will be no Bongo in the Philippines. So looking back at their lives, all these key events, which include defeat and failure, and people who were also not necessarily supportive, were all part of their quest. And so as I was doing my dissertation, I didn't realize that their stories were interweaving into my own life as well. As I struggled to finish my graduate studies, it was difficult to be a single mom, a full-time graduate student, and a full-time teacher. I just had to bite the bullet at that time because I wanted to have a home, and to have that home, as I mentioned earlier, I needed to be a full-time teacher, and to be a full-time teacher, I needed to finish my PhD as well. And so all of these things were happening, and it was messy, it was difficult, and many times I wanted to give up. But discovering my own championship meant defining my own quest and seeing myself as the heroine of my own life story, and digging deep into my heart to find my own passion. And what was my passion? It was about lifelong learning. As a parent, as a teacher, as a researcher, and as a sports psychologist, I was on a lifelong quest of learning lessons, not just in my field, but in my life as well. And despite all of these trials, it is possible to me for us to aspire for excellence as well. And so when I defended my dissertation, that is what happened. In front of panelists who were really high caliber psychologists and researchers, I defended my dissertation and received a rating of excellent, which was very difficult because you needed a consensus of all the members of the panel to get that rating, and eventually march and earn my doctorate. But that's not the end of the story, because in the next Olympic, at the 2012 London Olympics, I found myself once more at the pre-Olympic conference, this time no longer a spectator, but a presenter of my study as well. And as I took the stage to present my study on what makes a champion, a narrative analysis of the storied lives of elite Filipino athletes, I certainly felt like I had gone through my own championship. And as I took that stage together with other elite sports scientists who presented state-of-the-art research and practice, I felt that I had my own quest too of becoming a champion, battling all these obstacles and difficulties to earn my right to be there in the Olympics as well. So going back to the question, can Filipinos be champions as well? My answer is definitely. Can ordinary people like you and I be champions as well? Absolutely. Thank you.